Have you ever wondered what it would take to be at the 100% tippy top of your expat social game? More importantly, are you like me and sometimes you look in the mirror and you wonder if any problems you're having might not be a little closer to home? Welcome back, travelers. You've landed at the Expat Cafe, and I'm your host, Aoife. Join me as we spill some tea on living abroad. As you already know, if you are an expat currently living in a country other than your home, adapting, it goes far beyond the physical move of your property, maybe your family and your pets. If you're preparing to become an expat, you're starting the wonderful journey that will make you also an expert in visa processes for whatever country you've chosen. But adapting also involves so much more than the physical logistics. It involves confronting some self-sabotaging and probably ingrained habits all of us have to some degree. That's today's topic, and if you find that you meet any of these, never fear. We're also going to talk about the keys to freedom. Here are the 7 habits of self-sabotage that could be affecting your life abroad. And the first one is the comparison trap. Some expats make it look super easy, and we wonder how did they get their stuff together in one sock so well when we're struggling to get by, when we're struggling to get our electric on, when we're struggling to figure out the language. Well, the problem is, from a psychological standpoint, this type of comparison takes away from the joy of your own journey. But there's a reason that envy is one of the deadly sins. It's a joy killer. It will rob you of every last ounce of enjoyment of your own expat experience. And it really is a distortion of what is happening. Everyone is having their own struggles, and everyone is having to learn the language. Everyone is having, even people that came from a place where the same language is spoken, they're having to make the cultural adaptations. Each of us brings something special to the table. And so we rob ourselves of the joy of our own journey when we're constantly comparing it to other people's journeys. Don't forget, much of life is like the fakery of social media. People are only going to show their best selves, and people may not let you in on the struggles they are having. So if you find yourself falling into the comparison trap and maybe envying how well someone else is doing as an expat while you feel like you're struggling, the key to breaking out of this one is to begin some type of self-evaluation on yourself so that you can start marking where you've succeeded and you can celebrate those little successes. Something that's very true in the expat community of Panama is that a lot of the websites focus on the success stories. And where there is a proliferation of success stories and you're not one of those success stories, it can make you feel very second-class citizen. And that's a hard feeling to get over because you have to wonder, what are you not doing that someone else is doing? Well, honestly, there's probably a lot of things you're doing that that person's not doing, or a lot of things you're not doing that the successful person is doing. That's really neither here nor there. Psychologists identify the comparison trap as a supreme case of distortion and not being able to see that your own journey is just as valuable. There's a little bit of self-doubt when you find yourself falling into the comparison trap. And so I'm here to tell you, we've all been there, and we all envy people that make it look so easy. But remember, those people struggle as well. I struggle daily because there's some things that just do not make sense to me in how people operate. So I'm constantly observing and trying to figure out the social parameters and determine whether or not I want to participate. It's a personal choice. We all have to make it. How social you are or how non-social you are will really depend on a couple of different factors. But don't fall into the comparison trap because it is the supreme robber of joy. Make friends with the people that you see as successes because quite frankly, they've probably got oodles of tips and more than willing to share. One thing I've noticed about most expats is when they succeed, they're totally sharing it with everyone. A candle that lights another candle does not diminish its own flame. Number 2 is the isolation tactic. Avoiding new social situations and possible connections because it feels uncomfortable or overwhelming is really a way of putting up a barricade from enjoying your expat experience. Quite frankly, the isolation tactic is the absolute antithesis of what living abroad should be. unless you're hiding from the federal government or some other nefarious organization, really, you don't want to isolate. You move to other places to experience all the newness. What does psychology tell us about the isolation tactic? People that allow themselves to socially isolate and never break out of that are actually at a higher risk for depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. These are very bad, and as you face those, it can make you want to isolate more. And as you isolate more, the depression can go deeper, and that just creates a downward spiral. And the isolation tactic is one every expat falls into at one time or another. I go through it almost on a daily basis because I enjoy people. I like the idea of people, and I love humanity, but I just don't always want to be surrounded by the noise of other people's thoughts 24/7. So if that made sense to you, you're probably an introvert with me. Welcome. If that didn't make sense to you, you're an extrovert. I envy you. Welcome. But the key to freedom, if you're falling into the isolation tactic trap, is to challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to one social interaction a week, one really good social interaction a month. If I'm being honest, that's what I do. I pretty much have put my friends on alert that there's some types of daily activity I can take, like going out and doing kayaking, going out and doing sup. I can do those with other people and not feel drained. Going for a walk, things like that. But parties, oh, I feel so drained after parties. I enjoy them because I like people. It's a paradox. It's the great paradox of my life. I like people, but I don't necessarily enjoy constant social interaction. But I do force myself to say yes to at least one big party a month. And in the expat communities, as you may already know, if you live overseas, there's going to be tons of party opportunities. Now, if you live in a really isolated place and there's a small expat community, or there's not a lot of people around, you may have trouble finding those social events, but make it a point. Challenge yourself to do it. Do it well, do it right, and then go back and pat yourself on the back for having done it. You might make a new friend or two. And quick story time before I go on to number 3. Yeah, I went to a huge party that scared the crap out of me when I walked in because there were a lot of people in a very closed indoor space, and I instantly went into claustrophobe mode. But you know what? I ended up meeting 4 great people and had a nice little side conversation with them. And if I ever get put with those 4 people again, I am going to be in hog heaven because, like me, they were kind of introverted and they were just observing, and the party was crowded for them too, but we had such lovely conversations. And so even though I had to go to a party that was bigger than I really wanted to, it was a fantastic party. The person that the party was for enjoyed it, and quite frankly, I have to count it as a win because I met 4 people and got to have good conversations with them, and totally have new people that I think are going to be adding to my own tribe. So number 3 is nostalgia overdose. Yeah, the past is great for learning from your experiences. The past is fantastic for never doing certain things again because you learned your lesson. And the past is just great because that's where all good memories have happened. And eventually the memories you're making now will also be in the past. So we don't want to do nostalgia overload because we need to remain present. Part of every great religious and philosophical philosophy is to be present in the moment. When we are present in the moment and we enjoy what is happening to us, and we acknowledge what is happening to us, good or bad, we just acknowledge it, and we figure out how to solve it if it's bad, and we figure out how to enjoy it and preserve it if it's good. When we live in the present, we create great memories for the future that are fun to look back. If you've gone to a new country, or if you are in a new place, or if you are in some place different than your home, and you are finding yourself living in the past, the way we did it there was better. I miss those days. I miss this. I miss that. You're going to also miss some of the best things that are happening to you in your current location. I am very blessed in the fact that this is not something that bothers me. I have never been one to live in the past. I appreciate that the past is there, but I always find myself either loving what's going on or looking forward to the future. And so if you can balance your memories, and know that some of your memories are good, some of your memories are bad, but that's all they are, is memories, and you can concentrate on focusing on the present, you're going to find that nostalgia overload is not something you'll have to encounter and may not be your habit. Well, what if you find yourself living in a repeat loop of memories? Well, you're in luck, because there's a very easy solution. The key to freeing yourself from nostalgia overload is to please the portion of yourself that needs those memories. Some of you are just darn sentimental, and God love you, because your sentimentality is probably one of the hallmarks of your personality, and it's probably what makes you great. I am not so sentimental about most things, so not my thing, but you can blend the past and remain in the present. What I mean by that, you'll know who you are if you were the one that packed your entire house and brought your entire house to the new country, or if you brought a lot of mementos and keepsakes that make no sense in your new location, but when you look at them, they give you joy. And when you look at them, they make you happy, or they remind you of a special time in your life. Making memories is important. Keeping the memories that ground you are important. Living in the past, it's a killer. So we just won't do that. Instead, what you'll do is use the key to get out of the nostalgia overload. Blend your past with your present. Have the things around you that make you remember the good times, but also start collecting those things that make you remember the now, because eventually what you're going through now will be the good old days to you. We're always moving forward, and we're always changing. Number 4 is one I see a lot: perfection paralysis. As we age, what do? We develop egos. Egos are good. Egos keep us functioning in the world. An ego that's out of control, of course, is a whole different video. We're not even going to get into that. But when we let our ego keep us from learning because we don't want to be seen as less than or subpar, and we all feel that way when we're learning something new, we feel kind of stupid. When we allow our egos to get in the way of learning, that is often where you find perfection paralysis. What am I talking about? I don't want to speak if I can't speak it perfectly. I've been there. I don't want to try that new dance. I don't know it, and I'm going to look stupid if I make the wrong steps. As we grow, we forget the number one cardinal way we learned when we were children: trial and error, constant repetition. We forget that. And when we opt for perfection, we forget that there is a joy in learning. The fear of making mistakes is a broader psychological phenomenon that is part of perfectionism. Perfectionism taken to extremes, as any psychologist will tell you, can be debilitating. I see perfectionism in myself sometimes, but not to a debilitating degree, thank goodness. I see it in my husband, and it does hinder how he has been learning the language, but he's starting to come out of that. He's starting to realize that there is some truth to learning as a child. And yeah, when you talk to a native speaker of whatever language you're learning, you're going to probably get a lot of correction. They're going to be like, no, 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 no. Dice, this is how you say it. Pronounce it like this. No, never say that. That's the wrong way to say it. And if you can adopt a humble and eager learning style, you'll find that it clicks and it goes a lot better. If you have fallen into the perfection trap, the key to lifting yourself back out is to accept and remind yourself daily to accept imperfections. We as humans adapt to everything, and sometimes we accept the imperfect in our lives and it becomes perfect to us because it pleases us. So anytime that you're learning, really try to accept your own imperfections. One day, with enough practice and enough repetition, you will find that you have exceeded your own expectations. And you'll probably be so stinking pleased that you'll instantly forget all the ways you learned. But just, help someone else. Pay it forward. Remind them not to fall into the perfection paralysis trap. On to number 5. Over-adaptation syndrome. That is exactly what it sounds like. I said in a video, 2 videos back, I said, I've never really seen an example of the over-adaptation syndrome. I take that back. When our desire to fit in becomes almost an obsessive need to prove that we fit in, we start losing bits of ourselves. Have you ever seen the person living abroad that they learn the language, they learn the culture, and then all of a sudden they're dressing in the traditional types of clothing, and they're only eating the food from their new culture, and they are only doing things exactly as the new culture would do them? And if they have their own culture and richness and good things, they stifle those or bury them. That's not good, because what makes each of us unique are the experiences from our past that we bring to the present, the experiences from our home country that we bring to our new country. A diverse landscape of people with rich tapestries of life is the most interesting thing you can drop yourself into. At the very least, you'll learn a lot. If you find yourself falling into the over-adaptation syndrome, the key to pulling yourself out of this trap is to stay true to yourself. In other words, do not lose those things from your past, your family, your culture that make you unique. Of course, embrace your new home. There are some things I absolutely adore about Panama. There are some things I do not adore about Panama, but that's going to be true anywhere you live. There are things I enjoy that I will change about myself over time to fit more into Panama, and there are things I enjoy that I will not change. And you know what I've noticed? The Panamanians do not care. They're pleased. My neighbors, I'm speaking specifically of my neighbors, they're very pleased when I'm eating the food and learning new things and watching them as they cook and make their recipes. And they're okay with the fact that I keep a weird hairstyle and keep coming up with new tattoos almost on the weekly. I am an anathema to what they consider to be feminine, but my neighbors just accept people the way they are. And I think you'll find that about most countries that you land in. People are going to appreciate that you're foreign. People are going to appreciate that you're going to have different habits. And as long as you're making the effort to fit in, you do not have to submerge your entire being into the new culture. Trust that you have great things to offer. And don't lose yourself. That is the key if you're falling into the over-adaptation syndrome trap. So the 6th pitfall, short-term mindset, also known as vacation mindset. Now, if you're a slow traveler expat, that's an expat that travels and stays in many different places for longer periods of time, this is probably not even going to apply to you, but that's okay, because this one does apply to a lot of expats I see, especially in tropical locations, especially if you're going into the Caribbean areas, because it is almost like living on a permanent vacation. And what do you do when the vacation ends? You don't know what to do with yourself. The short-term mindset limits the depth of the expat experience, and in psychological terms, it's analogous to the present mindset or the present bias, where short-term gratification is put ahead of long-term adaptation. Research suggests that this means you will stay in the surface of wherever you have chosen to move and never really get to the depth of how to live there and be a fully robust person within that setting. And so the short-term mindset, while enjoyable and not at all odd, your first 3 to 6 months in the place you've chosen, should be moved past as soon as possible. The key to lifting yourself out of present bias or short-term vacation mindset is allow yourself the time to get over it. In other words, when you're in the new place, spend your first 6 months to a year treating it like a vacation, with a mind to the fact that anything you can get settled in quickly and take care of during that year will just make your transition easier. It took about 12 to 18 months for me to really feel like I was living in Panama. And my husband still hasn't made that transition because he's semi-retired. So he's only here half the year, sometimes even less than that. although he wants to be here, but he's going to have to go through that transition every time he gets here. So we go through present bias or short-term mindset almost every time he comes home. And so we live with this one constantly. It's not a trap for him, it's just a necessary part of our lifestyle at this point. And there's an easy way to pull yourself out. Just make sure that you start gaining some solid depth in the place you've chosen. Last but not least, and in my opinion, it is the worst of the traps we can fall into, and we're all guilty of it. I am, and I've recently had to break out of this trap. It is called the echo chamber. You know what it is. If you live in today's world, it is so easy to get into an echo chamber. The echo chamber is a psychological phenomenon where we gravitate towards those that are like-minded. And when you're an expat, it doesn't even have to be a broad stretch of like-mindedness. It can even be just other people that speak the language we speak. Part of the beauty of living abroad is being able to experience the diversity, the changes, the newness. And you can't do that if you're never having the pain of your own beliefs challenged. And so, yeah, the echo chamber to me is one of the deadliest that an expat can fall into. If you're planning to become an expat, make sure that you are fortifying yourself to be willing to meet people that aren't like you, to be willing to meet people from different walks of life. Meet and interact not only with locals, but with expats you wouldn't normally associate with. That is the way to step out of this trap. So there you have it, the 7 acts of self-sabotage that every expat is going to run into. How far we fall into the pit of those traps is going to determine really how hard it is to dig out. But the keys to get out of these traps are pretty easy. Most of it just centers around awareness. And if you are willing to take stock of yourself and admit that we all have faults, we're not perfect, we do like to be around people that think like us, sometimes it's just nice to be on vacation even when you're living somewhere. It doesn't have to be a game killer, although it can be. So if you see someone struggling with these and you want to share with them some of the keys, feel free, share the video, tell them about it. Sometimes people struggle because they can't find their way out of those, and that's when you'll want to start gearing people towards helpful services for expats in the country you've chosen. For instance, one of the videos on the site, we talk about expat sadness. I'll put a link to that in the description, and you can go watch that. It also has some links for people in Panama. I get the benefit of getting really good topic ideas and feedback from the people in the Las Tablas area who I see very constantly. I would love to hear feedback from some of your struggles, some of your successes, and some of your stories so that I can figure out how to get these stories and successes and struggles to other people, and maybe they can get some benefit from them. So if you have any great story that you think will be of help to someone, feel free to drop it in the comments, and let's see if we can't make another video out of it. I'm fine with doing that. I have a list of topics I plan to cover, but goodness, your ideas are probably going to be tons better because each of you are out there living your individual expat experience. Remember, your journey is unique, it is you, and it is what makes your journey great. Until we next spill tea, keep your coffee strong, but your expat game stronger.